We've discussed the old ways of printing text and image, but how do we print text and images today? What follows is a condensed workflow of modern print production, using offset lithography as the final printing process. First, we start out with the layouting process. Here we combine text and images using our knowledge of the elements of art and design and keeping in mind whatever communications objectives we have to address. In the design process, we use the proper tools, creating or collecting raster images and illustrations, inputting text, and generating vector graphics and packaging them all into our layouting or vector file. Once we've finalized our design and gotten approvals from clients, partners, or whoever else needs to see these designs, we move on to the prepress stage. The prepress stage is a catch-all term for everything you need to do before the actual printing. That involves making or packaging a print-ready file, properly formatted, containing all the fonts and images along with the correct printer's marks, correct resolution, and devoid of all typo errors and mistakes. Once this high-resolution print-ready file is finished, we hand it over to our chosen printer. The choice of printer and printing method will depend on the requirement, but in this example we're going to use offset lithography, which is the most common method for high-volume print jobs. Now the printer has two choices: either proceed to image setting, or what is called the computer-to-film process, or plate setting, or the computer-to-plate process. Let's tackle image setting first. Computer-to-film is an older process and largely being replaced by plate setting. In this process, the entire design, text, and images are split into multiple layers, representing each of the CMYK process colors, or whatever spot colors the design specifies. This may be split manually by the operator or separated by the RIP software and the image setter itself. Each color is made into its own piece of film. The films can either be positive or negative films as shown in the photos. Typical jobs can run from 1 to 4 colors, and with the use of additional spot colors, can even run up to 6 or more. These films are called color separation films, or color sep. For example, for a full color job, there will be an output of 4 films corresponding to the colors cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. If you want to add a spot color based on the Pantone matching system, that will require another layer. But bear in mind that there will be additional costs in doing that. The film looks like it's in black and white, but the shades represent the color density information the specific color will print in. Once the film has been made, it has to undergo a photochemical process. The films will be exposed to aluminum plates that will be used by the offset lithography machine, 1 plate per film. Here is footage of an operator exposing the image on the film onto the aluminum plate. Once the plate has been properly exposed, it will now be used for the actual printing. Here's a concise infographic video on how the offset lithography process works.
Printing is one of the most common image reproduction methods of the modern age. But what is offset printing, and how does it work? Offset printing begins with the prepress stage, where digital files are broken down by their color separation and are laser etched onto coated aluminium plates. Each plate is then loaded onto a roller known as the plate cylinder. Each revolution of this cylinder dampens the non-image area of the plate with water from the dampening system. A vegetable oil-based ink is then passed through a series of rollers and finally onto the image area of the plate. This image is then offset onto another cylinder with a rubber blanket. The addition of this process results in a clearer and sharper final image and is where offset printing gets its name. Paper is loaded into the start of the press and is separated by jets of air to ensure that only one piece travels at a time. The paper is passed between the blanket cylinder and the impression cylinder, where it receives the printed image before it's passed on to the next unit to receive the next color. After the page has traveled through each of the units, it is piled at the end of the press with a thin layer of powder separating each page so that the printed image can dry without marking the pages above and below. Offset printing is best suited for larger volume prints, as most of the cost is in the initial setup, and the price per print will fall as the quantity goes up.
In plate setting, the use of films has been cut out of the workflow. Instead, the image goes straight to the plate making process. The process is called computer-to-plate, or CTP. Here's a video showing an operator demonstrating the CTP process. It starts with color separating a design into its component colors. Each color layer will then be laser etched onto its own plate. After that, it's on to the printing. Here's a video from Solo Press showing actual footage from plate making to printing using offset lithography.
Offset lithographic printing. It is more than just operating a machine. You need to study the entire process, its structure, its properties, and to understand the interaction between the water, ink, and paper. The design of the image and text is laser etched and transferred onto multiple sheets of aluminium called the press plate. One press plate is mounted to a cylinder in each printing unit. This machine has 6 printing units. Each unit prints one colour. Colour printing typically uses ink of 4 colours: cyan, magenta, yellow and black. The colour model CMYK. For this job, we will be using 4 of the printing units. The stack of paper is lifted into position. A sheet separation unit separates the paper with jets of air or a vacuum to ensure that only one sheet is sent through the press at any one time. As the press plate rotates, its first point of contact is the dampening unit. This has a mixture of water and other chemicals. This dampens the non-image area of the press plate. The press plate then passes the inking unit. Starting from the ink fountain, the ink will pass through multiple rollers called a roller train, which then sticks to the image area of the press plate. It is then passed to the blanket cylinder, which squeezes the water and the inked image area is picked up. It is then passed to the final cylinder called the impression cylinder. The paper runs between the impression cylinder and the blanket cylinder, pressing the image onto the paper. The paper will then run through the transfer drums. Each cylinder is equipped with grippers that pick up the paper from the previous cylinder and transfer it to the next. Once the prints have passed through each unit, they will then be dried with hot and cool air and placed on the delivery pile. And that is the process of offset lithographic printing. Thank you for watching.
To summarize, the first step is creating the actual design. Next is the pre-press stage where we prepare the file for printing. Then we turn over the file to a printer. The file is then color separated into however many colors it needs to be printed, and only then will printing begin. And that's how far we've come from the days of Gutenberg to today.